let's look at 4 different product development models. This is part of the aspect of what's going on because you're going to probably customize product development to suit your own purposes. But let's look at the whole aspect of it. No matter what happens, you're going to have long lead times. Your initial launch is going to have some high inventory levels. You're going to have imbalances along the way. You're going to pay attention to a lot of different aspects, a lot of localization options you're going to have. You're going to have uncertainty in almost every market because it's new. That's the nature of it. So, what options do you have? Air shipment, drop it off by parachute. That doesn't quite work very often for almost all products, but the aspect of what are the options? If you have a product that's already doing well here in the United States, do you sit down there? How do you get it to market, especially if it's customizable and you can get a lot of money off of it? So, that being said, it's got a high profit margin. How do you get it and sell it properly in Europe? Are you going to manufacture it here and air freight it over? You're going to send it by slow ship? That may take time. Is it better off to find a plant that already exists, buy it, and open up a factory in Europe? What about your forecasting methods? Can you sit down and tweak them to make them even different? So look in the aspect of the case analysis on HP. They consider postponement as an option. They wanted to go slower. So look in the aspect of what's out there. I think this is a really good example. Ship the unlocalized printers to the European DC and localize them after observing the local demand. To maintain that fabulous 98% service level, the safety stock really had to drop from a 3.8-week supply to 2.6. Consider about tweaking those different variables that you have. But a 2.6-week supply is a bit terrifying if you're trying to make certain that those shelves are constantly stocked. Empty shelves don't sell anything. But by having that lower supply level, they actually saved about $800,000 a year. And now you're talking about even in a mega company, as like you have with HP, $800,000 is nothing to sneeze about. That's a big deal. So the value of the inventory in transit, pay attention about insurance costs, that all goes down, and you have the whole aspect of inventory, and everybody knows you don't want to have inventory in your system. If you can keep it in somebody else's system, that's always better off. Some of the localization material can be locally sourced when you can ever do that. At European, the DC had to be modified to facilitate the localization. The printer needed to be redesigned because the components, especially the power supply, really played a major aspect of it, and the language. So focus in on that because Europe has multiple languages and those countries are actually small compared to the United States. One country can just be the size of 2 states put together, and all of a sudden they have their own specific language, and you have to customize your printer for that. So pay attention to all those details. Does it go left to right, right to left? Depends how it's out there. So look at the different aspects of it. So when we talk about the aspect of the inkjet printer, we want to look at that as almost a brand new market. So how do you go about doing that? A lot of times that suppliers, they're usually selected after the design. You have a design, you're all ready to rock and roll with it. So then you choose your suppliers. Traditionally, there's a decline in purchase material costs. You also have an increase in the purchase material quality and the decline in development time and cost because it's already developed. But there's an increase in the final product technology levels because now you're picking up some of the other things the manufacturer can deliver. So you have all that integrated right there. But on the spectrum of the supplier integration, in other words, when you bring the supplier into the aspect of developing the product itself, things are going to change. You have to be able to trust that supplier. Now, if you're making washing machines, Whirlpool, which is notorious for this because this is how they started out, they started buying a lot of different companies. A lot of appliances sold in the United States are Whirlpool with a different brand name on them. So you have this supply line over here. You have almost identical one of a different brand over here. You don't think there's going to be some cross migration from the supplier aspect? They're going to want to tweak it so they all have standardized products because they heard the previous lecture about standardization. They like standardization. You like it. It brings down your cost. It's easier to use, and they don't have to retrain workers on standardization. So if a supplier is not involved in design, do you trust them? Is that why they're not involved? So pay attention. Look as to what the specifications are. Make certain, if you can, you want to start having one of the other levels if you can do it. If not, if you want to hold control of the design 100%, that's your choice. You're going to pay a price for it, and that could be a little bit higher cost, but maybe you're making enough money you can do that. There's 4 different options. One of them, you design the whole thing and own the whole thing from beginning to end. The white box, the next level, it's informal. It says, hey, what do you think of this? And then you sit down, the buyer consults when designing your products. There's no formal collaboration. How about if we do this? Well, I think it's a good idea. Let's make that change over here. Let's knock off the corners on it. And then you have the formal supplier integration. We call that the gray box, where the aspect of here's your design. What do you think of this? Before we start production, let's do some aspects of start tweaking the design. You may even have the supplier looking at the product itself and saying, well, here's this, let's make the design. Or you may employ the supplier to actually make the design, and then you approve their design. It depends what's involved, how much trust is involved, and how much of a partnership this is. Really, in a really good supply chain relationship, everybody trusts everybody else, and therefore moves efficiency, and everybody makes a good profit margin. In a black box, the supplier gives the supplier a set of interface requirements. Here's what we need. Can you do it? So they put their designers on it, and then they come up with it. They design and develop the required component, and pretty much it's a black box because the supplier knows everything inside, and you pretty much know what's inside, but you're really trusting them to actually deliver that. So you really have 4 things. One of them is you design it 100%. Then the white box, we call it, is you have an informal thing is, yo, Joe, how you doing? And you have that aspect of it, that type of a relationship. And then you have the gray box where you bring them on board and you really have a full-blown collaboration. You may have meetings on a regular basis until you launch the product. And then the black box where the supplier does the entire thing and you're the one that actually sits down and implements, sells, and you have a different relationship. So determine the internal core competencies. What is your strength? Nike, I tend to always refer to Nike, they're almost like the ultimate virtual corporation. Nike designs shoes. Now they design clothes. I'm not certain they really do. Okay, but they design an item. They have a spectacular marketing machine, but they don't manufacture a thing because their core competency is design and marketing. They're really good at it, and they're huge and gigantic in the process. So they farm everything out. Other people are doing that, and they focus in on their internal core competencies. When you're looking on that, you should need to pay attention to, are you really good on the design? Or is somebody else better than you are? Are you listening to them? Are you going to listen to the supplier here in the gray boxing and have them work on it? Or is your supplier that good, you can just give them the specs and they crank it out and you sell it? It just depends how good you are. So determine the current and future new product developments, especially if you're in an innovative field, as to how it can be tweaked to make it even better. If your supplier recommends, we can do this over here, we can add this, you can put a counter right inside the machine if you do this. Okay, so pay attention to what the manufacturers out there to make that relationship a success. Select the suppliers, build relations with them, align the objectives with the selected suppliers. Here's what we need. We know we can sell it. We have a hole in our product line over here. This is what we want. Can you sit down and supply us with the tools to make this happen over here? And then pay attention to them and have that dialogue. Which suppliers can be integrated? Make certain you can agree on intellectual property and confidential issues. This is a big thing. You need probably to have a lot of documentation to go back and forth, especially if they're supplying other people in the same industry. Make certain that they're going to commit the right number of personnel for your needs to be successful, and then co-locate the personnel if appropriate. So the 4 different methods: design yourself and make them comply, design and consult, white box, integrate the supplier with the design, and then supplier helps with design, black box, and they send you a product and you don't even know what's necessarily all in it. You just know, by golly, it works. I can sell this thing and make a killing. So between it's all done, new product development, you got 4 methods, and it all depends upon relationships as to how much you can trust, how much intellectual property or IP is involved, and how much you can sit down and really be cutting edge in your field for product or service. Take care.